Good morning, Rotary District 6460. This is Ryan Byers, your immediate past District Governor, and I am sitting here with past District Governor Eric Dolbeare to have a conversation about what has been an exciting, very thrilling project for our Rotary District over the course of the past several years, assisting with agricultural development in Chongwe, Zambia, and surrounding areas. And Eric, you're really the one who has been coordinating this project on behalf of the district. So we've got a few questions for you today that will hopefully let everybody out there know where their contributions have gone and where we would like their contributions to go in the future. So, this is a project that has really evolved over the years, and it began with teaching farmers techniques that we use in the U.S., but not really focusing on inputs, not really focusing on equipment. For newer Rotarians in our district, can you give them a little bit of history and know what the first phase of the project consisted of and when it got going?
Sure. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about this, but also recognize that this has been a team project. There were 3 of us on the travel team that went over, but there was a whole team that stayed here in the U.S. and that supported us and got all this going. So it's been a district-wide project, and really could not have pulled it off if it hadn't been for all of that help. So I wanted to recognize that. And if I start naming names, I'm sure I would forget too many. Sure. So I won't do that. But we started this actually, it was in the incubation stage way back in 2017, discussing a group study exchange trip that would focus on agriculture. And there were some contacts between one of the clubs in our district and a club in Lusaka, Zambia. So it made sense to maybe try to work in that area. The process of getting the grant for the GSC, not GSC, but the vocational training team, VTT, that process took some time. So we actually delayed the implementation until November of 2018. So that was our first trip over. And what we did at that time was we worked with 11 farmers to teach them some of the practices that we would use here. Primarily proper fertility, pest management, seedbed preparation, basic agronomic principles. Those farmers over there have been farming for years. They do not have access to the financial resources of their own to invest a lot in their crop. And so what we did that very first year was that with this group of 11, we provided the inputs for 1 acre to do it the way we suggested. And we asked that they then plant another acre using their traditional methods. And we did this for a couple reasons. We knew that we would be asking them to invest quite a lot more than what they typically would, or even maybe have the ability to do. And we weren't really certain that our methods were going to work. And so we didn't want to put them at that kind of risk and then have it flop and they would be out that money. So we felt like this was a good way to all of us could learn. And the results were very good. So the planting season was November, December timeframe. And we had that first session, so to speak, we had our own boots on the ground for quite a period of time. We went in November. I stayed for a few more weeks. The other team members left. They came back and I left, and then they left and I came back. So we were on the ground there for well over a month to get things going. And then we all came home and went back in March, which would kind of correspond to like August here. They're about 5 months ahead. And so at that time we could see that what we were suggesting was working, because the acre planted with our methods looked really good. And then the results were harvested in the May and June timeframe, and the yields were really quite good for the project fields. We had about a 230% yield of the traditional crop, so more than double. The yield of the project fields was more than double the yields of their traditional fields. In some cases, that was on the average. In some cases, that was a very dry year over there. the traditional fields just made almost nothing, and yet they still had a crop that they could harvest with the project fields. These folks are subsistence level farmers. They basically are producing what they consume. And one of the farmers that year said there's going to be a lot of hungry people this year because their crops were so poor. But so we felt like we were on the right track with what we were teaching. There were some funds left after that first year, project funds, and so we decided to go into year 2. And we expanded to include an additional 30 farmers, and we used that original group of 11 as mentors, kind of our lead farmers. And we went over, not quite as intensely, the travel team as what we did that first year, but we went over to kind of kick it off, provide training. And I should, I guess, back up and say that when we went over that very first time, we didn't really know what to expect, so we had to develop the training program based upon what we saw, and then do the training and then follow up. So we really started at ground zero. So we again saw good results in year 2. It was a better growing season year, so all crops were good, but the project fields again were approximately double the yield of the traditional fields. So we had seen 2 years, a really dry year where crops were very poor, and the project fields were really pretty decent. And then we saw a good year when everything was good, but still the project fields were even better yet. So that was encouraging. And then that pretty well wrapped up the funding that we had for that original project. And actually, there were several donations from district members, from the district itself, from clubs, to do just a little bit more. And so we went over in August to kind of wrap up that project, which would have been 2 years worth, and also encourage them to continue on. And so we had enough funding that we were able to hire a person with some ag background, some professional ag experience, to kind of help steer this along while we were gone. And there were no inputs provided to anyone for that 3rd year. But we actually had 70 that came to the meeting where we were just talking about this, and everyone knew in advance there would be no free inputs, but if they wanted to come for the training, we'd be glad to give the training. And so, as I said, 70 came. So the 3rd year, it was that group of 70. And then that's when COVID hit, and so that really curtailed our ability to travel over there. That was also a successful year, and now we're kind of moving toward a new phase with a new project.
Understood. And did the pandemic, I know it slowed down your ability to travel, did it slow down implementation of these practices at all, or have the folks over in Zambia kept at it?
So it definitely curtailed our ability to get over there. And there was a period of 13 months when none of us from the U.S. were over there, but we had contact, and we had developed a network of folks that we knew and worked with, ag professionals. This young lady that we were hiring to assist part-time, but also the other professionals that we knew just from being there. And so although the project itself was not continuing, other than paying Naomi, our person on the ground over there, the methods were still being taught. And as far as implementation, what we have seen, I think, is human nature in general. There's a spectrum of adoption. You know, we teach a group of 70, and there's a big portion in the middle that kind of do part of what we say, and there's a few that do everything we say, and then there's a few that do none of what we say. And so we kind of saw that. But what I would say, what we have seen is that group that do very little of what we suggest shrinks after they see what their neighbors are doing. And so adoption continues to improve, but it also takes repetition. You know, you don't change habits in 1 year or, you know, 1 season or even 2 or 3. And so it takes the continual reinforcement of the message and being there, so to speak. So we may have slowed a little bit during the pandemic, but it did not stop, and we had maintained contact, and things kept going well. But yeah, it definitely slowed down our progress a little bit.
But now we're back up and running.
We're up and running.
You've been back in Zambia.
Yes.
And my understanding, as recently as January this year, and we are actually getting ready to shift into a little bit of a new phase of the project, or maybe you would look at it as a new project altogether, which is really going to focus more on developing a cooperative for the Zambian farmers that will, instead of just teaching them techniques, also allow them to access equipment and maybe even be able to hire out some of their work. So can you talk to us a little bit about what's happening with this new phase?
Yes, so in January of 2022, I was there, and that was at the tail end of the planting season for this past year. And that was really our last agronomic focus. And we were laying the groundwork for what this new phase will look like, which, as you said, is ag mechanization. We had already been discussing this, myself, with the lead farmers, with Naomi, with others, that this is where we could see this project moving toward. And so even though we did not have funding at that time, and it was, I guess you might say, not a certainty, this is where we wanted to move. And so I was trying to prep them for that. I went back in August of this year, and during that interim between January and August, this group of lead farmers had actually formed a co-op, registered with the federal government of Zambia. And so now we do have funding for this new project, which we are working basically with the same group of folks, but the focus will be less on agronomics. We'll continue to reinforce the message of proper fertility and pest control and seedbed preparation. We're going to continue that. But right at this point, we're not trying to get more people in. We're trying to continue to kind of raise up the level of production of this group that we have. And so the co-op that has been formed, and when I was there in August, we had several meetings with potential members that might want to join the co-op. So this group of lead farmers had formed it, but basically it was pretty small, really, 10 people in the co-op. So we knew that we needed obviously more than that, and that was the intent. And so we kind of had a recruitment, I guess you might say, blitz, with the folks that had been through our training and that were already implementing the practices that we had taught earlier. So we're staying with that same group. And not that we wouldn't include others if they were really interested, but they will have to have gone through or be willing to go through the training in order to be in the co-op and participate in this. So what this new project, the project that we are in right now, is doing is basically providing a tractor, a plow, a strip till machine, a disc, and through donations from clubs, a planter. And this has already been purchased and it's delivered. It's at a location that is secure, and the co-op down the road will become the beneficiary. The co-op does not yet own that equipment, but that will be transferred when the co-op is up and running and really clear that it's going to be successful. So that adds a whole nother level of complexity to this, because we can teach the agronomics, and the farmer can invest, $100 in their own currency, in their acre or a couple hundred. But now we have to teach the co-op, the members, how to run a business, and the business will own this equipment and then hire the use of the equipment out for the benefit of the members. So it's a lot different from the earlier project, but it's still production agriculture. And this really goes back to the very first day that we were there in November of 2018. We visited with a person who is the lead agronomist for Pioneer Hybrid International in the country of Zambia. He's like their top agronomist. And we were able to make connection with him and invited him to come and visit with us. This was like the first day we were there, because we knew nothing about what we were getting into. And we asked him, what do farmers here need? The very first thing he said was mechanization. That is what they lacked. So we had this in mind from day one, and now we've trained enough folks that we felt like we had a critical mass that we could pull from to create this co-op. And I would say also that to follow up on this, the August meeting, or I should say the August trip, when we had this series of meetings to recruit members to join, members had to pay a fee to join the co-op. And so it takes a bit of a leap of faith from them to do that. And money is extremely tight over there. I don't think any of us that would be watching this video or sitting in this room would fully appreciate how few funds that they have. And so it's asking quite a bit, even though the dollar amount would not be a lot. In our standards, we would think that's very little. But still, they had to invest in order to join the co-op, in order to be able to access the equipment. And now they will have to pay for the use of the equipment, enough to cover the fuel and the person driving it, and a reserve account. Eventually that equipment's gonna wear out or break down or need an oil change or something. So they will be paying a fee on a per acre basis to do this. And so the challenges are at a couple levels. One is helping the farmers see that they need to do that, convincing them that they're gonna eventually get enough yield back to pay for that, but then also teaching the co-op how to structure this business so that they can operate this equipment. And everyone who's used to having such a small budget to work with, you know, it's just quite a change in their normal activity, I guess, to do this. And so those are kind of the challenges that I see going forward.
Because this is quite a leap. I mean, we're talking about individuals who were walking behind plows or maybe using cattle.
Well, and even more primitive than that. I mean, we have been on farms where they're using a hoe, and they don't even have cattle to pull the plow. And then I've even seen folks farming with a stick. So I mean, it is so primitive. So yeah, this is a huge leap forward. They've seen tractors, others have them, and there are tractors available for custom hire, but they're priced out of the range of what this group can afford. So the cooperative ownership will be the way in which they can access that. And so they are cooperative by nature. They're also a little bit skeptical when it comes to money and trusting people with money and that sort of thing. But they do tend to cooperate very well. And so that's good. And that's what gave us the idea that this kind of organization could be successful.
And there were many clubs, as District Governor Bill was going around this year during his official visits, that presented him with checks to go towards this project. And you said this, but I just wanted to put a finer point on it and to let everybody know that per your comments, the planter that those checks were designated for is there and it's ready to go.
Yeah, that's right, because we had the funding, it looked like, to purchase the tractor and the tillage implements, but not the planter. And we couldn't just spend everything we had, because we've got to pay Naomi, we've got to fund another trip or two, hopefully, to go over there for the USA team, or at least one of us. And so yeah, we couldn't spend everything, but it was just budgeting it out. It looked like to even get through this crop season that is starting now. They are getting ready to plant. As soon as rains come, they will be planting. So in order to fund that through this crop season, we could not afford a planter. So yes, Bill went around and he was, kind of making the case, and Neil Miller behind him was also, making the case for this. And I want to thank all the clubs that contributed, and some individuals as well. Individual Rotarians made direct contributions. And we also had contributions from a club across the Mississippi River in another district. So grateful for all of that. And so that allowed us to purchase the planter, which has been delivered. And when I was there in August, I did some research and found I did several interviews and finalized on one individual that can run this tractor, Naomi will kind of manage his activity, but so we feel pretty good about that. And my next trip over, I hope to see that in the field. Matter of fact, I expect to see that in the field.
Sure. So we're getting ready, we're gearing up for the first planting season where this equipment will be used. Remind us a little bit of when they'll harvest and when we might be able to see some measurable results from this latest phase of the project.
So the way that it will work is that hopefully there will be some tillage activity shortly, like within maybe a few days, maybe even more folks are watching this video, that will be going on. And then as soon as we get a portion of that done, or all of that done for the people that have paid, they will have to pay in advance in order to have access to this. As soon as that is done, then we'll hook onto the planter and start planting. So that'll be more than likely sometime that mid to late November through early December. That's kind of the desirable window. Really any time in November, but they've got to wait until the rain comes. And so then the crop will progress, and typically if it's planted in timely, like November, then they would start harvest sometime in late May, and harvest might run on into June. So that's when we will we'll see the results sooner, because we're going to see those nice uniform even stands of corn where it all comes up at the same time, all the same height. That's what we'll be looking for, and that'll be the result of that planter. I would say also another reason the planter was important for two reasons. One, they needed to see the advantage of that. They needed to have the advantage of that agronomically, but also it gives the co-op another source of income. So we are expecting that a good percentage of the folks, the members that hire the tractor and the plow, will then also hire the tractor and the planter. And so that'll be a revenue stream for the co-op. So that's kind of how that time frame will evolve.
And you talk about the co-op generating revenue. Obviously, our district, our clubs, our members, they're the ones who have helped get this up and going in terms of providing the initial equipment. But it sounds as though, and if I'm right, tell us a little bit more about this, it sounds as though the intention is that hopefully this cooperative will become a self-sustaining entity that is not reliant upon our support.
Yes, that is where we are headed. That is our goal. That's our intent. The fee that they are paying now is discounted to what is available on the custom market. It's about 2/3 roughly of what they would pay if they hired someone else to do it. So it's significant, but we wanted it to be affordable, but it had to cover at least, as I said, the fuel, the person driving the tractor, and a reserve account. It is not covering any trips that we would make to go over and coach or to train. It's not covering Naomi's, what we pay her. So over time, the fee will have to either raise a little bit, or we'll have to get more members in to generate more income. But yes, that is the goal, that eventually we'll be doing enough acres at a good enough profit margin that then Rotary will be, we will be backing out of it. Maybe not backing out of it, but able to hand it off, would be a better way to say. And to give a time frame on that, it's a little difficult. When I was first thinking about this and discussing this kind of long-term plan, I felt like 3 years would be really the minimum, and it would be optimistic, but maybe 3 to 5 years is what I'm thinking it should take. And we're now in the early stages of year one, so we'll see. Maybe that was just kind of my own estimate. It's going to depend on how quickly the farmers adopt the use of it, and how many members. I would say also, we were concerned about getting more folks signed up for this than what we could really do, because with one tractor and one plow and one operator, it's not like here where they're going to go out and do 100 acres in a day. And these plots are like 1 and 2 acres, and the roads are really more imagination than a road. And so going from one farm to the next is time consuming, and they might only get to maybe 4 farmers in a day. They might do 4 acres or maybe 5 or 6. So it's going to take some time to get around. So we decided that we would try to keep the number, we needed at least 50 farmers to join and pay to feel comfortable about even purchasing the equipment. And I kind of felt like, well, what could we feasibly do timely? I thought, well, we could probably do maybe 70, but that would be quite a few. So when we had these meetings, we told everyone that was there that we needed 50. We need 50 to sign up to pay, and then we'll get the equipment. And so we actually had 56. So we hit the number that we needed. Though we have that many paid members, we've got the equipment on the ground, we've got people lined up to run it. So I think right now it's looking pretty good. I'll know a lot more in 2 months.
All right, and we'll certainly look forward to that update. And just to be 100% clear, we talked about some of the checks from clubs and individuals to purchase the planter. Those were run through our Rotary District 6460 Foundation. You mentioned some other funding, and that's come from a global grant through the Rotary International Foundation.
Yes, that is correct. And so the global grant funded the very first project, the vocational training team, and it funded this project up to now, and there's still a little bit of that money left, but we will exhaust that fairly soon, within a few months, I should say. Certainly by the end of this planting season, or this growing season, that will be exhausted and then some. We purchased the planter. There was a little bit left from what clubs had donated, so that will be well used for this project as well. And then the challenge will be, from our end, is having the funding to carry this on. That's really what it's going to come down to.
So if there are any individuals, any clubs, any other entities who would like to help replenish those coffers, what do you suggest that they do?
Well, I think donations earmark it for the Zambia project to the District Foundation. That is where that's where the money will go. They will be the caretaker, the treasurer, and then we'll be able to have those access. But you would to those funds. But you need to be sure that you earmark it, that it's for the Zambia project, so everyone knows. It's all transparent. And that way we have a kind of a record of, okay, what do we have available? What can we spend? But it's really important that that we get this funding. We don't know the future if there would be more global grants, but if there are, I'm certain it won't be soon enough to carry this on without a break. And that we want to avoid. We want to have this seamless and keep going because we now have people in place. We've got to be able to keep funding them. And so we really need that stream of income at least for a few more years in order to keep this project not only going but growing. I see this, we could grow to possibly 200 members in the co-op, maybe not with one tractor, but this can all grow and we can impact a lot more folks, but it's going to take some additional funding to do that. It's a good project, it's working, we've got a history of it, and so it'd be good to donate.
And if anybody would like to make those earmarked donations to the District 6460 Foundation, you can talk to myself, you can talk to District Governor Bill Doral, you can talk to District Governor-elect Neil Miller, and we will certainly make sure that you know where those funds are to head. And I would like to thank Eric Dolbeare for sitting down with me today to explain this very vital project, which is going to leave an outstanding legacy for our district in another corner of the world. And I'd like to thank Eric and the rest of the team as well for all of their efforts in implementing it over these last 4 years.
Absolutely welcome. And again, it is a district-wide project. We've had clubs really come forward and make direct donations to it. And so I want to thank everyone that's been involved. And if you've not made a donation but you think that you want to, I would encourage you to do so. But it is a district project. It's not just me. There were others, several others that went over. Now with the funding the way it is, we only kind of go one at a time. But anyway, it's a district-wide project, and it's been very successful and will continue to be. So yeah, that'd be great. Make a contribution.
Thank you. And we're out.
Okay.